Now, do you have ideas about what you want to do with AI, but you just don't know where to start? Or maybe you don't even know what you can do with AI. The critical thing with both of those things, I think, is about understanding the capabilities of AI, what you can actually do and achieve with AI. So today, I thought we'd go over a tool that can help us with this regard. And going by the fact that not everybody is a developer, we're going to be using a tool that is going to be very friendly for everybody. Now, this tool is called n8n, and it's a visual workflow editor. And n8n allows us to create automations, workflows, and even AI agents that we've heard so much about. If you want to create bespoke AI-powered workflows to power your processes, then n8n is the tool for that job. Now, if you cast your mind back to what we were looking at before, we had some user texts, some messy user feedback, and what we wanted to do was to extract insights from them. And we wanted to extract insights in terms of sentiment and insight pairs. So we wanted insight and sentiment pairs, and we wanted to get however many insight sentiment pairs there were from any given user feedback. And we had been using GPT, specifically ChatGPT 5 for that, and the results were fine. We had to put in manually each user feedback with a mega prompt, and we just got back the specific insights as a response from ChatGPT. But what we found is that we could replace ChatGPT with a small model that was running locally on our machines. So it was fully private. The compromise was that where we could do everything in one step and one prompt with ChatGPT, it took 3 prompts with this small model. So we used it to get positive insights first, then negative insights, and then structure the whole thing in JSON because that's the format that's useful to have it in for later processing. But this is a kind of manual, right? 3 steps instead of 1. It's a very manual process. So maybe what we need to do is to put some sort of a workflow in place to automate this process. And this is exactly what n8n can do. Now, we'll be building that exact workflow in a later video, but for this video, I thought it'd be useful to just get an introduction into n8n and see what n8n can do. So then it gets your brain thinking about how this might apply to your workflows and work processes. And specifically what we're going to do is we're going to build a simple chat tool to connect to our small model so we can talk to it and get to know it a little bit better. Now, if we head on over to n8n website, don't believe what it says on the top here. It's not really for technical teams. It's super easy. Now, you could get n8n to host it for you, and that comes at a cost. But we can just install it ourselves. It's super easy. But you can't just install it like a normal app. That's why you won't see any download button here. It's the same thing as was the case when we installed Open Web UI last time, because n8n is a web service, and what it needs is an environment to be installed into. And Docker is that environment, and Docker is an app that you can install. So if you haven't already installed Docker, go ahead and do that and install it. And then once you've launched it, search for n8n, and this one's good. It's got 100 million plus downloads and good star rating, and we run that, and that's going to take a few minutes. What this is doing is downloading the image, and then we use that image to create a container. So now that it's finished, let's do that. So let's hit run. And if we open up the options and select port, we want to make sure that we know what port it's running on. Don't worry if you don't know what that is. You don't really need to know any of that because n8n, well, actually, Docker will tell us the full address once it's finished. Don't worry about volumes or anything like that. We'll just give the container a name. and then hit run again. So that's going to create our container, and then it's going to give us a link, and that's going to open up a browser, and there we go. We've got n8n up and running. All we need to do is just create an account. Wasn't that easy? In just a few minutes, we were able to install n8n and have it running self-hosted on our local machines. Let's go explore this thing. So this is our home screen. We're going to see all of our workflows that we create. Obviously, we've got nothing in here at the moment. So let's create our first workflow. Now, before we go ahead, there's a quick mental model to use when working with n8n, and it's this. n8n is a visual workflow creator. Now, what does that mean? Well, n8n deals with nodes, and think of a node as a discrete action that can be performed. A workflow is a series of those nodes or those actions chained together in a sequence. And when you have these actions chained together, then they create something meaningful. The anatomy of a node is that each node has an input, i.e., things that have already happened are available to it to be used as input in order to do stuff, which is the main node action, the action part, the configuration part for what that node can do. And it uses that input as part of that configuration. And then the final part of the node anatomy is that it has an output. So it does all of its processing and then it spits out an output ready to be used as another sort of input to another node later on down the chain. When you add a first step, you'll have a number of nodes available to you. It'll first of all bring up the trigger manually, the trigger nodes. But if we do a search, we'll see that we've got a whole bunch of connections available to us. For instance, you can connect with Google Sheets, so you can get it to do stuff with your Google Sheets rows and Google Sheets and stuff like that. It also has lots of other things, like it's got Airtable connections and stuff like that. But to start with, we are going to use a special kind of a node called a trigger. And a trigger is what triggers the workflow. It's what sets the automation off. And we have a few types of triggers available to us, including a chat trigger. And we're going to use that. Now, when we create a chat trigger, it doesn't really have any sort of input because it's a trigger and there's nothing else that went on before that. So what we have there is the configuration, and then we have the output. Now, it's easier to see how this works when we actually execute that node. So let's type in hello, and then that node has triggered. And if we open it up, we'll see what's happened. We've got an output there with our chat input hello, which is the output from this trigger node, which is going to be available to all of our nodes down the line. Now, it's a little bit lonely. We've got this chat that's saying hello, but we've got nothing to say hello back to us. So let's fix that. And we're going to fix that by hooking up our Olama server and connecting to our small model. So it's our small model that is going to say hello back to us. Now, before we start, we need to make sure that we've got our Olama server running. So let's head on over to the terminal and type in Olama serve, and there it's running. If you don't have Olama installed, you need to watch my previous video on that. Now, if we go back to our n8n, we can add a simple node called a basic LLM chain. And here on the left, we can see the available inputs, and we've got our chat input, which is available to us. And by default, it's going to use the entire chat input as the prompt, and it's only going to use that as the prompt. But we can change that, and we can define it below. We can switch to expression, and we can open it up so we can see it bigger, and we can drag in the input from the previous step, specifically the chat input, and we can add some prompt around that. And then on the right here, we get an example result. This is an example of what the output looks like. So like I said, it's much easier when you've got an example data flowing through to see how the node is working. So now if we execute this step, we're going to get an error. And the error is going to be like there's no model subnode connected. And true enough, there is no model subnode connected because we haven't connected it to our Olama server yet. So let's fix that here. So if we click on the model subnode plus icon, but what we're going to use is our Olama instance. And then we need to create a credential, and a credential is a way of connecting the node to the actual Olama service. Now, by default, it's using localhost as the address, and localhost just means our local machine. So we have our machine, then we have Docker, and then inside of Docker, we've got n8n. And n8n doesn't have access to our local machine, which is outside of Docker, which is Docker's host. So what we need to do is to tell it to look at the host machine for the Olama service. And to do that, we just type in host.docker.internal. We don't need to put in an API key because we haven't set one. And then if we click save, then it should tell us that it's connected. And now once it's connected, we'll see the list of models that we've got available. And if we install any other models in our Olama server, those will also be available here. But let's select Qwen 3. We're big fans of Qwen. And close that up. And then let's just run this again. So now we've got hello back from our Qwen model. Now we can go further with this. So we can update this expression with our mega prompt. And this is an example here. And then now we can use our chat to feed in any user feedback that Olama model is going to run and is going to give us our insights. Now this hopefully gives us a good idea about what we can do when building workflows. For example, we can create another node, another basic lab, and we've got available to us the text from the previous step. And in general, we build these workflows, these step-by-step chains of events that build to something meaningful. Now we can go ahead and use this as our daily driver to replace our chat interface, but that's not really what we're here for. So in the next video, we're going to build an AI agent to handle the 3-step process that we needed for the small model. So make sure you come back for that.